Most people picture dinosaurs as one giant era of massive reptiles ruling the earth, but dinosaurs actually lived across three completely different worlds, each with its own rules, its own giants, and its own mass extinction. Today, I'm breaking down exactly what happened in every single dinosaur period, from the quiet, brutal beginning to the apocalyptic end. And it starts with an origin story that almost nobody gets right: Triassic. Here's the thing about dinosaurs: they didn't show up and immediately take over. They weren't even close to being in charge. The Triassic period is the origin story of dinosaurs, and it's nothing like what you'd expect. No towering predators shaking the ground, no herds of giants stretching across open plains. Instead, picture a world where dinosaurs were the underdogs. Small, scrappy, outnumbered, and fighting for survival in one of the harshest environments the planet has ever produced. Let me set the stage. During the Triassic, every single landmass on Earth was fused together into one enormous supercontinent called Pangaea. That means no Atlantic Ocean, no Pacific coastlines splitting populations apart, just one continuous stretch of land running from pole to pole. And the interior of that supercontinent was brutal. We're talking scorching temperatures, massive deserts, and arid conditions that made most of the landmass borderline uninhabitable. The coast had it better, but the heart of Pangaea was essentially a furnace. This geography matters because it explains something that confuses a lot of people. The earliest dinosaur fossils don't show up spread evenly across the globe. They concentrate heavily in one region, South America, specifically Argentina. And the reason is simple. That part of Pangaea had the right combination of climate, environment, and geological conditions to both support early dinosaur life and preserve it in rock. The rest of the supercontinent was either too dry, too hot, or just didn't have the right sedimentary conditions to leave us a fossil record. But here's where it gets complicated. Dinosaurs did not walk onto an empty stage. When they first appeared, the Triassic was already packed with other reptiles, amphibians, and early relatives of mammals called synapsids. Crocodile-line archosaurs dominated many ecosystems. Giant predatory Rawasuchians filled the top carnivore roles. Dinosaurs were latecomers to a party that was already in full swing, and they were not the biggest or the baddest things around. Not even close, and the timing of their arrival is genuinely one of the most fascinating unresolved debates in paleontology. Here's why. We have footprint evidence, trace fossils left in ancient mud and sand, that suggests dinosaur relatives, a group called Dinosauromorpha, existed as far back as 242 to 249 million years ago. That's early to middle Triassic. These tracks look like they belong to creatures walking on two legs with a distinctly dinosaur-like gait. The problem? We don't have the bones to match. Actual dinosaur body fossils don't show up in any real numbers until roughly 230 to 221 million years ago. That's a gap of potentially 20 million years between when tracks suggest these animals existed and when their skeletons finally appear in the rock record. So what happened during those missing millions of years? Were early dinosaur relatives just incredibly rare? Were they living in environments that didn't preserve bones well? Or is the track evidence being misinterpreted? Nobody knows for certain. It's one of those questions that keeps paleontologists arguing at conferences, and it's still wide open. What we do know is where the origin story gets physical. The Ixigualasto Formation in northwestern Argentina, nicknamed the Valley of the Moon because of its barren lunar landscape, is the single most important window into early dinosaur life on Earth. Radiometric dating pins this rock layer between 230.23 million years ago at its base and 221.36 million years ago at its top. That's one of the most precisely dated early dinosaur windows anywhere in the world. And the fossils it contains are extraordinary. The star of the Ixigualasto lower beds is Herrerasaurus. And forget any image you have of early dinosaurs being small and timid. Herrerasaurus was a fast bipedal predator, roughly 10 to 20 feet long, with serrated teeth and grasping claws built for taking down prey. It was the most abundant dinosaur in the lower third of the formation, meaning it dominated the local carnivore niche during that early window. This was not a gentle beginning. Dinosaur life was aggressive and competitive from day one. Herrerasaurus wasn't hiding in the shadows waiting for its chance. It was actively hunting, actively killing, and actively carving out territory in a world full of other predators that wanted the same resources. But even Herrerasaurus wasn't running the show. During the Triassic, dinosaurs as a whole made up a relatively small percentage of total animal diversity. They were successful in their niches, sure, but the world still belonged to other groups. Crocodile-line archosaurs were everywhere. Other reptile lineages filled roles that dinosaurs wouldn't claim for millions of years. Like, the Triassic Jurassic dinosaur story isn't one of dominance, it's one of survival. And then everything changed. Around 201.4 million years ago, the end Triassic extinction event hit. And it hit hard. Roughly 80% of all known species on Earth were wiped out. The exact cause is still debated, but massive volcanic eruptions associated with the breakup of Pangaea are the leading suspect. Enormous lava flows from what's called the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province flooded the atmosphere with carbon dioxide and sulfur, triggering rapid climate swings, ocean acidification, and ecological collapse on a global scale. The competitors were gone. The crocodile-line archosaurs that had dominated so many ecosystems, devastated the Rauisuchians, gone. Many of the other reptile groups that had kept dinosaurs in check for millions of years, eliminated. And the dinosaurs? They survived, not because they were the strongest or the largest, but because they were the ones still standing when the dust settled. This is the pivot point. The end Triassic extinction didn't just kill off 80% of life. It cleared the runway. It emptied entire ecosystems of the animals that had been filling the top predator roles, the large herbivore roles, the mid-sized generalist roles, and the survivors, the dinosaurs, suddenly inherited a world with almost no competition. Every ecological niche was wide open. Every food source was available. Every territory was unclaimed. The Triassic wasn't the age of dinosaurs, it was the audition. And the dinosaurs only got the part because everything else died. But if you think inheriting an empty world means things got easier, wait until you see what the dinosaurs did with it. Because the Jurassic is where they stopped surviving and started building monsters. Jurassic. Remember that extinction event that wiped out 80% of species at the end of the Triassic? This is what comes after. With the competition gone, dinosaurs didn't just survive, they took over, and the rulers of this new world weren't the predators. They were the long-necked giants called sauropods, animals so absurdly large that the Jurassic almost feels like nature was showing off. But to understand why the Jurassic looks so different from the Triassic, you have to understand what's happening to the planet itself. Pangaea, that single massive supercontinent, is finally breaking apart. The landmass is splitting, rifts are flooding with seawater, and suddenly you have new coastlines everywhere. New coastlines mean new moisture. New moisture means new forests, new habitats, new ecosystems. The planet is getting wetter, warmer, and greener than it's been in millions of years. Ferns and conifers are spreading into regions that were previously barren desert. And here's the thing, when you split a continent, you also split the animals living on it. Dinosaur populations start diverging geographically for the first time. Species that used to share the same range are now separated by oceans. Evolution starts pulling them in completely different directions. Lineages that looked nearly identical at the start of the Jurassic are unrecognizable from each other by the end. This is why Jurassic dinosaurs look so wildly different from their Triassic ancestors. It's not just time, it's geography. Isolation is the single most powerful engine of speciation on Earth, and the breakup of Pangaea turned that engine on full blast. And nowhere on Earth captures the Jurassic better than one single rock formation in the western United States. The Morrison Formation is the Jurassic's greatest gift to paleontology. This thing is massive. It stretches across Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, New Mexico, Arizona, South Dakota, Oklahoma, and Kansas. 9 states, one formation. Dated between roughly 156.3 million years ago and 146.8 million years ago, it covers about 10 million years of late Jurassic life, and the fossil density is absolutely staggering. We're talking up to 200 meters of dinosaur-bearing rock, layer after layer after layer of bones, teeth, and skeletons packed into mudstone, sandstone, and limestone. Some quarry sites within the Morrison have produced hundreds of individual specimens from a single dig location. Dinosaur National Monument in Utah alone has over 1,500 bones visible in a single rock wall, one wall. That's not a fossil site, that's a graveyard frozen in stone. When you picture a Jurassic dinosaur in your head, whatever image just popped up, there's a very good chance it came from the Morrison Formation. Allosaurus, Stegosaurus, Diplodocus, Brachiosaurus, Apatosaurus, all Morrison animals. This is the formation that built the popular image of the Jurassic period in museums, movies, and textbooks. It's basically the Isquigualasto of the late Jurassic, except instead of a valley in Argentina, it's an entire region of North America. And the stars of the Morrison Formation, the stars of the entire Jurassic period, are the sauropods. The late Jurassic is the confirmed global peak for sauropod diversity. diversity. More species of long-necked giants existed during this window than at any other point in Earth's history. Now, there's an honest caveat here. Some of that apparent peak might be inflated by the fact that the Morrison Formation is exceptionally good at preserving bones compared to other formations of the same age. If you have better preservation, you find more fossils, and more fossils means more named species. So there's a real scientific debate about whether the late Jurassic was truly the golden age for sauropods everywhere on the planet, or whether the Morrison is just giving us a biased sample. But even accounting for that, the evidence is overwhelming. Sauropods were everywhere. They were dominant and they were enormous. Let me give you a number that will break your brain. Mamenchisaurus sinocandorum, late Jurassic China. This animal had a neck approximately 15.1 meters long. Just the neck, not the body, not the tail. The neck alone was 15.1 meters. That is longer than a standard city bus. Picture a city bus. Now picture that entire length as just the neck of a living animal. Its head could reach into the windows of a 4-story building while its feet stayed flat on the ground. That's not science fiction. That's a real animal that actually existed, confirmed by fossil evidence, and it's one of the longest confidently measured sauropod necks ever found. Let that sit for a second. 15 meters of neck on one animal, walking around eating trees like it was nothing. But if you think that's extreme, wait until you hear about the size debate that nearly broke paleontology. Back in the Morrison Formation, there was a sauropod originally named Amphicoelius fragilimus. The early literature on this animal produced estimates of 58 meters long and 150 tons. 58 meters! For context, a Boeing 737 is about 39 meters long. This dinosaur was supposedly longer than a commercial airplane and heavier than a blue whale. Those numbers were so extreme they bordered on science fiction, and honestly they kind of were. Here's the problem. The entire estimate was based on a single bone fragment. One fragment. And that fragment, it was lost. Nobody knows exactly what happened to it, but the original specimen that generated those legendary size estimates is gone. Vanished from the historical record like it never existed. Later, scientists went back to the original descriptions and drawings, reevaluated the fragmentary evidence, and the animal, now renamed Marapunosaurus fragilimus, got revised down to somewhere between 31 and 40 meters. Still absolutely massive, still one of the largest dinosaurs ever, but a far cry from 58 meters and 150 tons. The gap between the original claim and the revised estimate is roughly the length of a tennis court. That's how much uncertainty a single lost bone can create. This is actually one of the best examples of how paleontology works in real life versus how people think it works. Most people assume dinosaur sizes are settled facts, like someone measured the animal and wrote it down, but the reality is that a single bone fragment can generate wildly different interpretations depending on what assumptions you make about the rest of the skeleton. Two equally qualified scientists can look at the same piece of evidence and come to conclusions that are literally tens of meters apart. Paleontology isn't a settled museum display, it's a live argument, always has been. And the Amphicoelius saga is the cautionary tale that every dinosaur enthusiast should know about before they quote size rankings as gospel. But here's what makes the Jurassic truly special compared to what came before and what comes after. The Jurassic doesn't end with a bang. There's no asteroid, no supervolcano, no mass extinction event that wipes the slate clean. The transition from the Jurassic to the Cretaceous is gradual. Sea levels shift, some species fade out, others radiate into new forms, but the giants persist. Diversity keeps climbing, the ecosystems that the Jurassic built don't collapse. They evolve. They hand the baton forward instead of dropping it, and the Cretaceous will take everything the Jurassic built, every lineage, every body plan, every ecological niche, and push it even further. More species, more diversity, more extremes, but it will also bring something the Jurassic never had to deal with. An ending so violent, it left a chemical signature in every rock layer on the planet. Cretaceous. The Cretaceous period lasted 79 million years. That's nearly twice the length of the entire Jurassic. And it is not just more dinosaurs for longer. This is the most complex, most geographically diverse, and most species-rich chapter in the entire history of dinosaurs. Everything that came before, the Triassic origins, the Jurassic giants, all of it was building to this. The Cretaceous is the peak, the absolute zenith, and understanding that is the only way the ending hits the way it should. Let me put it in perspective. Sampling adjusted estimates place the late Cretaceous as the Mesozoic interval with the highest number of estimated dinosaur genera. We're talking roughly 784 genera, not species, genera. That is an almost incomprehensible level of diversity. Dinosaurs weren't winding down during the Cretaceous, they weren't getting old and tired, they were doing the exact opposite. They were spreading into every ecological niche on every landmass, evolving into more shapes and sizes and survival strategies than at any other point in the previous 160 million years. That number, 784, should reframe everything you think about the extinction. This wasn't the era where dinosaurs died, this was the era where they peaked. The extinction wasn't a mercy killing, it was an interruption. But before we get to the ending, we need to talk about why the Cretaceous produced so much diversity in the first place, and one of the biggest reasons is something most people have never heard of: the Western Interior Seaway, starting around 100 million years ago and lasting until roughly 70 million years ago. A massive shallow inland sea flooded the center of North America. Not a river, not a lake, a full ocean corridor cutting the continent in half from the Arctic down to the Gulf of Mexico. If you were standing in what is now Kansas, you'd be underwater, Colorado underwater, the Great Plains gone. North America wasn't one landmass during most of the Cretaceous, it was two separate islands, Laramidia to the west, Appalachia to the east. And that single geographic fact changed everything. Because when you split a continent in half with an ocean, you split the animals too. Dinosaur populations on the western side evolved completely independently from populations on the eastern side. Different predators, different herbivores, different evolutionary pressures. This is one of the primary reasons Cretaceous dinosaur fauna looks so wildly different from region to region. It's not random variation. It's isolated evolution happening on two separate landmasses that used to be one. The Western Interior Seaway is essentially a 30 million year experiment in what happens when you put a wall through the middle of a continent's entire ecosystem. And the answer is, you get an explosion of unique species on both sides. Now, multiply that effect across the entire planet. Continents were continuing to break apart during the Cretaceous. South America was pulling away from Africa. India was drifting north as its own isolated island. Australia was separating from Antarctica. Every major landmass was becoming more isolated, and every isolated landmass was producing its own unique dinosaur lineages. That's why the Cretaceous has 784 estimated genera. Geography was literally manufacturing diversity, and then it all converges on one place. One formation, one final chapter, the Hell Creek Formation. Spanning the latest Cretaceous, specifically the Maastrichtian stage, the Hell Creek Formation is where the story of the dinosaurs ends. Located across Montana, Wyoming, and the Dakotas, this is the rock unit that preserves the last dinosaur communities on Earth. T-Rex lived here, Triceratops lived here, Ankylosaurus lived here. These aren't just famous dinosaurs, they're the final generation, the last wave of a 160 million year dynasty preserved in stone right up to the moment everything stopped. And we know exactly when it stopped. The KPG boundary at the top of the Hell Creek Formation is dated to 66 million years ago, plus or minus 0.07 million years. That's not an estimate. That's not a rough guess. That is one of the most precisely dated moments in all of prehistoric time. We can pinpoint the end of the dinosaurs to a window of 70,000 years out of a 4.5 billion year planetary history. The precision alone should tell you how much scientific effort has gone into understanding what happened at that boundary. And what happened is written in the rock itself. Here's where it gets fascinating. In 1980, a team of scientists was analyzing the thin clay layer that sits right at the KPG boundary, the exact geological line between the age of dinosaurs and the age after, and they found something that shouldn't be there: iridium. Concentrations up to 160 times the normal background levels. That number matters because of what iridium is. It's a platinum group metal that is vanishingly rare on Earth's surface. During our planet's formation, almost all of Earth's iridium sank into the molten core along with other heavy metals. The crust has almost none. You don't find iridium in normal sedimentary rock. You just don't, but you know where iridium is abundant. Asteroids, meteorites, extraterrestrial objects that never underwent the core separation process that stripped Earth's surface clean. So when scientists found iridium at 160 times background levels in a clay layer that dates to exactly 66 million years ago, the implication was immediate and staggering. Something from space hit the Earth at that exact moment. And here's what sealed it: that iridium anomaly isn't in one location. It's not a regional quirk. That same chemical fingerprint, the same spike in iridium concentration, has been found in KPG boundary layers on every single continent. Everyone. It's a global signature, a planetary scale chemical timestamp that says, at this exact moment, something enormous arrived from outside the Earth and changed everything. That something was the Chicxulub impactor, an asteroid roughly 10 to 15 kilometers across that slammed into what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The crater it left behind is approximately 180 kilometers in diameter. The energy released was on a scale that's genuinely difficult to comprehend. But it wasn't the impact itself that killed the dinosaurs, not directly. Here's how it actually worked. The asteroid hit shallow ocean and carbonate rock at a speed of roughly 20 kilometers per second. The impact vaporized billions of tons of rock and sulfur, launching it into the upper atmosphere. Within hours, superheated debris rained back down across the planet, igniting wildfires on multiple continents. Within days, the dust and sulfur aerosols spread globally, blocking sunlight. Temperatures plummeted, photosynthesis collapsed. Plants died. Then the herbivores that ate those plants died. Then the predators that ate the herbivores died. The entire food chain, from the bottom up, disintegrated in months. An impact winter that may have lasted years. Roughly 75% of all plant and animal species on Earth went extinct. Every non-avian dinosaur gone. Not just the big ones, not just the famous ones. Every single non-avian lineage that had spent 160 million years diversifying across every continent on the planet erased. And that's what makes the Cretaceous extinction so devastating to actually think about. This wasn't a species in decline getting pushed over the edge. This wasn't a group that had run its course. Remember those 784 estimated genera. Remember the Western Interior Seaway, driving isolated evolution on 2 separate continents. Remember the global continental breakup, creating unique lineages everywhere. All of that was still happening. Dinosaurs were still diversifying, still spreading, still evolving into new forms. The machine was running at full speed when the asteroid hit. There's actually an active scientific debate about this exact point. For years, some researchers argued that dinosaur diversity was already declining in the final few million years before the impact. That the asteroid just finished off a group that was already fading. It's a comforting narrative, slow sunset instead of a sudden blackout, but here's the thing. When scientists went back and corrected for sampling bias, meaning they accounted for the fact that we simply have fewer fossil sites from the very latest Maastrichtian, a lot of those apparent diversity drops disappeared. They weren't real biological declines. They were gaps in the fossil record masquerading as extinction trends. The rocks from those final million years just aren't as well sampled, so it looks like fewer species existed, but the data, when properly corrected, tells a different story. The dominant scientific picture now is that dinosaurs were not a dying empire when the asteroid arrived. They were at or near their absolute peak. 79 million years of evolutionary success, the most genera, the most geographic spread, the most ecological diversity they had ever achieved, and then a rock from space 10 kilometers wide ended all of it in what is, geologically speaking, an instant, not a slow fade. A full stop. That's what happened in every dinosaur period. 160 million years of evolution, from the first small bipedal predators in Triassic Argentina, to the towering sauropods of the Jurassic Morrison Formation, to the 784 genera of the Cretaceous, all building toward a peak that never got to see what came next. The dinosaurs didn't fail. They were interrupted. If you enjoyed this video and want to see world's most deadliest dinosaurs explained, click the video on the screen now.